um, our Siraaz Patel. He is a community. He's police. He's part of the police force in Cumbria. He is now the operational lead for positive action recruitment and works in the forces for the diversity unit. So I'd just like to call Shiraz, please. Thank you very much.
Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for stopping on and giving me the last lot today. I've got the difficult bit where you're all itching to get away. So the time that we all finish depends very much on how long my presentation takes. The idea is for it not to take too long, because what I want to do is share with you guys exactly why what I do is very important to me and why I'm passionate about it. But also, what I want to do is to give you an idea of where I want to get to. I think it's important to understand where I come from and what it is that drives me. So I'm a police officer. I'm a sergeant. I was promoted in 2008, and working backwards, I joined Cumbria Constabulary in 2008. Currently the operational lead for positive action, and I work in the diversity unit, which is managed by Sarah Dimmock, who is my partner in crime, who's in the auditorium, virtual auditorium, so to speak. So if we've got any questions between me and Sarah, fingers crossed we'll be able to answer them for you. I joined in 2003 and I was stationed in the south of the county, and a lot of my experiences I can mirror along with what Saj first introduced this morning when she kicked the conference off, which was Cumbria looked very, very different back in the days when I first came up to police in the county. It was predominantly white British. We didn't see many migrant workers working in the leisure industry or in the hospitals back then. So as Sonia said earlier, I did stick out like a sore thumb. And it was quite obvious that there was somebody new in town that was wandering around with a shiny, bright uniform and was getting involved in things. And people were a bit perplexed. Who is this guy? What's he doing here? Now, I'm considerably older than when I was when I first joined the police. So those that I've worked with will probably raise their eyebrow and chuckle and say, never. But I used to be quite hands-on. And I used to love the high-octane incidents, and it gave me a real sense of pride, was being able to go in, deal with something that was quite volatile or traumatic, and just fix it for people. And my first real experience of racism in the police was a proper eye-opener. I think that's the only way to describe it. You'll have to forgive the terminology because I'm a Prestonian through and through, despite having been in Cumbria for just short of 18 years now. I still won't lose my roots. So there'll be some Prestonian twang that might transfer its way through into my input. But what happened was we'd been dispatched to deal with a large-scale disorder that spilled out onto the street in the centre of town in Kendal. And as we arrived, it was ongoing, and somebody from the crowd decided it'd be a good idea to throw a can of lager at the police. And it hit my colleague who was stood next to me in the head. So this person was duly arrested for assaulting a police officer. And as we placed this person into the van for transport back to the police station, this person wasn't that inebriated to miss the fact that ethnically I was different to all the other cops that were stood there. So they gave me some choice words, which involved non-use of a tom-tom and directing me to go somewhere. At which point, they were further arrested for using racist language. Now, this incident is really important because this set the tone for me in my service, because it became quite a divisive incident. The individual was charged with assaulting a police officer and using racist language. When they went to court, the court imposed a penalty for the assault and awarded compensation for the racist comments that had been made towards me. And this drove a real wedge. My colleagues felt incensed and felt like the courts had let them down and somehow positively discriminated in the circumstances, placing more importance on one victim over another. Now, I didn't ask for this, but that's what the courts did. And this then became the norm, where when we went to an incident, and we were dealing with predominantly either violent or drunk people, it just became sport for these people that they would have to try and inject some sort of racist taunt or insult at the one individual that happened to be different out of the group. And over a 12-month period, in my first 12 months of being an operational police officer, I was described by the hate crime officer in South Cumbria as a platinum victim. So this became the norm. The courts, took a robust stance on it and imposed a compensation order more often than not. And my colleagues thought that this was something that was quite comforting to me, when clearly it wasn't, because they weren't understanding the impact. And they believed that it was what they called a cash cow, which I found quite insulting. But I was a lone voice, and I was one of only a handful of officers from a BAME background that were policing in Cumbria at the time. So this went on for a while, and I refused to let this influence the way I policed. I refused to, hide in the shadows, and I still retained my approach, which was to be hands-on and do my job as was trusted to me. But what this meant was that people that were actually being handled by a BAME officer, right, who they'd verbally abused and used racist retorts to, were now actually taking it upon themselves to go into custody and make a formal complaint because they'd actually been touched by somebody who was from a BAME background. So when somebody goes into custody and they want to make a complaint, they're perfectly entitled to do so, and they're entitled to have the matter investigated. My first public complaint came from somebody who had arrested for being drunk and disorderly, and they complained, and the words I still remember to this day on the complaint forms were, the officer's motivation for arresting me was because I am a different colour to him. And I was investigated for a racist arrest. So this went on for a while, and there were a number of complaints made against me where people that had been arrested who were unhappy about the fact that they'd been arrested by somebody who happened to be an Asian officer, and for probably quite embarrassed, having tried to be quite clever and funny for their friends at the point of arrest, and then felt quite embarrassed, and they would make these complaints. And lo and behold, instead of recognising the trend that was occurring, what happened then was that our professional standards department launched an investigation into me because there were far too many complaints made against me where people were unhappy about my conduct, and what they wanted to see was whether there was a pattern of behaviour where I was targeting people from a particular ethnic group. Now, I hate to say this, but in 2003, I would say over 99% of the population that I policed was white British. So there's a real risk that I was either living the dream through acting out my prejudices, or I happened to be in an area where I was an extreme minority. But instead of seeing the obvious, I was risk assessed to see if I was acting out any prejudices and behaved in a particular way that would bring the organisation to disrepute. That was back in 2004. So I then got promoted in 2008, and my experiences of promotion were significantly different to what they would be for anybody else that goes through promotion today, because we do have a network, and I'll tell you a bit more about that network as I get to the end of the input. But when I applied for promotion, I did raise some eyebrows because people didn't feel like it was a done thing. If you're a member of a minority group that's performing well, you're done okay, and you should be grateful. No, not this individual. I've got plans and I'm going places. So despite people's misconceptions that I was going to be incapable of doing so, I passed my exam, I got promoted, and I took up leadership roles in various different capacities, whether that was as a custody officer, or as a team manager, or as a custody manager latterly. But in various different capacities, I've done that, and I've been fortunate enough that in 2019, I think it was, the Multicultural Police Association, which is an internal support group, had been dormant for the best part of about 5 to 6 years, and I decided that it was time to launch that and bring together a network of people internally, because What I realised was that there was a real disconnect between the organisation and the communities that we served. The George Floyd incident served to highlight what I've always known for some time, but the police service nationally didn't know, which was where the police service actually thinks it is and where it actually is two different things. The police service over the last 10 years have gone through comprehensive spending reviews, budget cuts, and because of that, neighbourhood policing is all but eroded, which means that we no longer have the day-to-day contact with our communities, our minority communities, our places of worship, our centres that provide sanctuary for people from minority groups. So over the last 10 years, having not had these relationships and cultivated these relationships, we now find ourselves in a position where we're trying to appease a nation that's hurting on the back of what's happened in America, and we find that there's a massive disconnect. So what Sarah and I have done is, before we recruit from these communities, we have to get legitimacy with these communities, and we have to get some credibility. So we held all 6 NPT, neighbourhood policing team leads, to account by saying, can you tell us how you engage with your communities, with your minority communities, and can you give us access to those communities? We knew what the response to that was going to be, but nevertheless, to satisfy our own curiosity, we posed the question. And the responses we got were disjointed at best, because they were quite haphazard, ad hoc, done through goodwill or coincidence, but there was no mechanism in place that regularly engaged with their minority communities to build a relationship that was credible and that had a mechanism in place to allow conversation to flow both ways. Now, for me, what I do is really, really important, because no longer, and I've gone past the point where we apologize for being different, and we apologize for asking for different protocols or policies to be in place to accommodate our individualities. The message that I gave to my group when I took over as chair of the Multicultural Police Association was, we're no longer going to apologize. We're not here to apologize and acquiesce. We are different, but difference brings not just better representation that mirrors the community, but also eventually will bring diversity of thought as well, because it's not just important to be reflective of our communities, but we have to be inclusive. Now, to be inclusive, we've got to hit a thing called the tipping point. Now, why do I feel so passionate about it? Because sadly, diversity hasn't really been a priority for anybody apart from Sarah Dimmock, who has been the lone voice for diversity over the last 15 years, working without any support or without any resources, and just keeps the organisation in check so that we don't find ourselves foul of an employment tribunal, or worse, an incident that's in the public arena. What's changed over the last 3 or 4 years? Well, I believe firmly that it really helps if you've got the appetite at the top tier to deliver this. Now, we've got a chief constable who's in charge of the force at the moment, and I believe that she has the right experience to drive this work forward, because she was a young, ambitious mum who worked in the old CID. Now, for anybody that's watched Life on Mars, I will tell you now that is probably about as accurate picture as you can get of non-uniform policing back in the 90s and the early noughties, because it was quite intimidating and sexist. And when you've got a young female who's ambitious and is committed to family life as much as that, I can tell you now, it won't be a comfortable place. So our chief constable knows what it's like to be an outsider in a male-dominated environment where sexism, and I dare say homophobia and racism, are probably very much tolerated as everyday occurrences. So 15 years ago, Michelle Skier, our current chief constable, rolled out a program of change, which was, no longer will women be in the background, and no longer will they be responsible for looking after displaced children or making cups of tea for witnesses and solicitors. We go beyond that, and she launched a program called the Gender Agenda, and that was supporting women to develop and progress and have fulfilling careers in the workplace. I'm proud to say today that in Cumbria, we have 41% representation in police officer roles and 41% representation women, right? The tipping point for women in policing was 30%. We are national leaders, right? And we have absolute bragging rights when it comes to championing women in policing, okay? But that same model is something that we could roll out for BAME and bring ourselves in line with not just the county average, but go beyond that. Because to get 3.4%, which is what I suspect from my data, what the county, what the settled population in Cumbria is at the moment of BAME residents, is not inclusion. To hit inclusion in the police service, the calculations from the academics is that you need to get to 16%. 16% BAME officers before the minority can hold their own and hold the majority to account. So what I'm saying today is that I absolutely believe in the appetite that my chief officers have, because I wanted to be a driver for change and be a thorn in the side, but actually it's almost like reverse mentoring, because my chief and my ACC are actually pushing me and saying, right, where are we at with this? What are you doing? And what do you need? And my remit is very clear. Make the workforce more diverse and make it more inclusive. If we get to 3.4%, we might have done it accidentally, but what does the atmosphere internally look like? It's likely to be toxic. People are going to view the new recruits with suspicion and disdain, because we know, having listened to all the other speakers throughout the day, that that's what happens unless people actually understand what positive action is. And in order to do that, we need to go through a culture, go through a program where we are challenging the internal culture and rolling out a program of change. But it can't just be a one-off event. In the police service, this needs to be day business. Just like we've got to a point now where we no longer look at the gender of the individual, and we look at the individual and their ability. It's no longer about the identity, it's about the ability. And I think Cumbria has gone through a program of change themselves where they've hit a eureka moment and they've realized we're actually better for having more diverse managers. And we've recruited externally, and we've brought some senior female leaders in who now run parts of the organization. And you know what? They've come from large cosmopolitan forces, having policed diverse communities, and they absolutely get this. And they are saying we need to play catch up, and we need to inject some real momentum and endeavour into this work, because it's critical that we start changing the demographic of the workforce. Because unless we make that change now, right, we are going to continue to have a disconnect with the communities that we serve, because we don't represent them. People don't look at the police service from the BAME communities and say, I can identify with them, because they have a common shared experience or a lived experience that I have. People, one of the things that came out of the survey that was done recently, and that applies to the police service nationally, is that BAME communities feel really demoralised that they see an obvious lack of senior BAME leaders within the police service. So whilst you've got the appetite at the top and you've got some representation at the bottom, the delivery is lost in the middle. So we are going through a real moment in time here in Cumbria where we've got an absolute pledge and commitment to delivering this piece of work. I buy into it wholeheartedly. I've got 13 years to do in the police service, and my pledge to you today, as a member of your community and a member of this group, is that I will continue to be a driver for change internally. But I can't do this on my own. And it links in with everything that Marcia said, everything that Saj said at the start, which is collaboration is the key. As soon as I was given a platform to deliver this piece of work, I realized my limitations, which is there's only so much credibility that I can have when I deliver this message. But if I get partners on board to come and endorse that message and be my alter ego and that need, this message is going to be more impactful. Moreover, there's only so much access to networks that I can have until I link in with the right people, because I want to recruit from that 25,000 that was on the opening slide, so that we've got a more diverse workforce. But in order to reach that 25,000, I need to collaborate with you guys. I've got the absolute appetite to deliver on this, and I will push and press the right people. But we're also at a point in time here where we've got lots of seats on lots of platforms that are waiting for people like you to come and tell us what we need to do to make it better, make it more inclusive. So I've got the appetite, and I've got the drive to deliver on this. The question I ask you today is an open one, which is, have you? One of the things that I also did was ask the same question to my colleagues internally, which is, whenever we have a recruitment drive or whenever we have an event to do with policing, it's quite embarrassing that in Cumbria we tend to go to the Home Office and say, "Can we have an image from your archives and we'll pay you for it?" Sarah and I said, albeit it's small, but we've got an internal community here, and we're no longer going to survive. We're going to thrive, and we're going to be out there, and we're going to showcase the beauty of our group internally, and hopefully that might resonate with some people, and that might encourage them to actually see the police service as a viable option. And when we get more people in, we're going to be able to resonate with those people in the community who dismiss the police service as a viable option. Now, it's taken me a while to build a confidence within my own group. However, we've got to a stage now where we've actually designed our own video to showcase the community internally and what my colleagues think of working in the police service. So, Richard, if I could ask you at this point to just play that video for us, hopefully it'll give you a flavour of our internal community in Cumbria Constabulary.
No worries, I'll share that now.
As Chief Constable, I'm absolutely committed to positive action. This gives people the chances and the opportunities to develop within the constabulary to ensure that we've got that wide, diverse workforce, which in turn makes sure that we continue to be a really good performing constabulary and deliver a really cracking service to the members of our communities, which is so important.
I want to join the police because I always wanted to help people, wanted to be around the community, and it's something different every day. You never get bored. You are like on top of the wave all the time.
As a specialist officer, I can deal with the everyday policing to the high-end stuff of the armed response, persons with weapons, violent subjects, also persons that fail to stop the police.
I think it's so fun. You learn so much in the job. Being a response officer, you've become like a really integral part of the team, and you become like a family within your team. And to be honest, I always used to say that you didn't even feel like you was going to work.
I do a lot of work on Appleby Fair, so essentially we help plan for the fair, working with a lot of different departments within the police. There's so much work involved, it can be quite stressful but extremely rewarding as well.
I'm a police constable. I'm on response, which means basically blue lights and investigating general inquiries. I wanted to join police. How cheesy as it sounds, it's probably the only job I wanted to do since very early age, because I thought it might give a life a bit of purpose.
Within Cumbria, what you get is you get to deal with a whole range of crime, a whole range of different investigations. We are very well trained and accredited, so although every situation is not the same, you are trained and you know how to deal with it.
I love the challenge of dealing with people and speaking to people. I've always been a people person. I see every interaction with the public as a challenge and an opportunity for me to leave a lasting and positive impression on people.
I wanted to join the police to make a difference in our community, and it's something which I'm very passionate about. You never get bored on your desk. You're always bouncing from one job to a job with different experience, serving people in the community.
I think if you feel like you want to be a police officer, then just go for it. I think so many people say, oh, I couldn't do that job, it seems so scary, I wouldn't know what to do, I wouldn't be able to deal with that situation. But you genuinely do learn, and I say to everyone, if you can speak to people and if you can hold a conversation, you can do anything in the job.
My advice would be just don't give up and give it a go, because it's just really a rewarding job at all.
Don't hesitate. It's the best force. The experience you get here, you'll never get anywhere.
If you really want to do it, give it a try. It's nothing to lose.
It's the finest thing you could possibly do. It's helping your fellow human, and ultimately it's knowing that because of your actions you have made someone's life, albeit temporarily, but you've made their life just that little bit better. And how can anyone not enjoy wanting to do that?
Thank you very much, Richard, for doing that. That very much is almost the end of my input. What are people's view on the video? Were you aware that your police service was that diverse? Did you know that you had that many BAME officers in there? Yeah, like with any other organisation, these people, sadly, over a period of time, feel like they don't have a voice, that they sit in the background, and that their job is to make sure they don't raise their head above the parapet. Well, unfortunately for them, Sarah and I don't operate like that, and we're here to rock the boat. We're here to have a network that thrives and doesn't survive. We're here, we're going to be in the public, and we're going to be everywhere, because our aim is to inspire people who ordinarily would dismiss the organisation as a viable option into applying and joining us, because we want to be more than just representative of the communities that we serve. We have a massive transient population that goes through the lakes every year. And if we use that as part of our calculations, 16% is just tip of the iceberg. We are a very, very diverse county, and our police service needs to be reflective of that. Now, I've challenged people internally to join us and help us push this message out. And I am somebody who's quite inspired by Dr. Martin Luther King. And with it being Black History Month, the one thing that sticks in my head over everything else when it comes to delivering this piece of work is a famous quote from Dr. Martin Luther King, which is, "We will remember not the words of our enemy, but the silence of our friends." And that's something that I want us all to take away today, because you guys have a real opportunity here to shape your police force and for it to be something that you're proud of. But we all have to contribute to that, because it's no one person that's going to make all the difference. Like I said, I've never known an appetite like this before at the top table, where they are absolutely committed to delivering change, but they can't do it on their own. They need us to show them the way. So I really, really am up for the challenge, and I hope you guys are too. So I'll pass back to Sonia, and if you guys have got any questions, I'll be happy to answer those. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Siraaz. That was absolutely wonderful. We've had lots of comments that everybody loved the video clip you just presented. Yes, and I was quite surprised. I'm sure everybody else was as well. I didn't know that there was so many diverse. Well, there was so much diversity in the policing in Cumbria. I've got something to ask you. Sorry.
Go on.
Have you got one?
Do you want to?
Just while I'm on there, very quickly, something that I've missed that I'm quite proud of that I need to share with you. When we talk about bragging rights, Cumbria is quite a modest police force. So our chief constable isn't as active on social media anywhere near as much as some of the chief constables. But there's a couple of things that I'm really proud of that I want to share with you. The first black police officer in the country, John Kent, policed in Cumbria. The first appropriate authority, who happens to be a BAME female from a Muslim background, Cumbria. Appropriate authority is the head of professional standards or internal affairs. Cumbria have got a lot to celebrate, but we're very mooted about our own achievements. So we need to get better at that. And Sarah and I are pushing the right people, but there are a lot of things that we're pushing that you guys just don't know about. And we need to get better at sharing that information with you. But yeah, there's some first that I really want to share with you. So Sonia, thank you for letting me interrupt you again.
No, that's absolutely fine. I just wanted to ask, how do new recruits understand the cultural differences and sensitivities?
Brilliant, right. What we do in Positive Action is we recognise that we're recruiting from underrepresented groups, so they won't necessarily have had the same exposure, same insight as the 98.1% of the workforce that we have in Cumbria, because we're 1.9% representative at the last count and growing. So what we tend to do is very early on, we allocate them a mentor, and the mentor works with them throughout the entire recruitment stage. And we have an agreement in place that the mentors will contact the candidates no less than every 30 days. That can be at an increased frequency, but it will be at least every 30 days to talk them through the process, what to expect, and also what the assessment scoring is like, etc. The reason we've done that is because we realise that it's quite a daunting process, and a wall of silence is just enough impetus to make somebody get cold feet and withdraw. So the more contact we have with individuals, the more confident they're going to feel. And that's what we want our candidates to do, is feel confident and competitive at the start line. And that's what we're doing, is we're bringing everyone to a certain start line. But once they get through the recruitment process, which I appreciate is quite a crude overview that I've given you, we don't just release them into the wilderness and wish them the very best of luck and hope that they have a fulfilling career. Not at all. We transition from mentor to buddying, and that's where we will pair them up with somebody from a underrepresented group. So in our case, the Multicultural Police Association, if they're a BAME applicant, and that buddy is somebody who'll be their friendly face, allow them to understand the internal culture, help them troubleshoot, problem solve, work through issues that they've got, help them improve their performance. It's just that confidence that you need, that isn't a formal agreement with the organisation, but is there to serve you and get embedded into the organisation. And that relationship with your buddy would continue to exist for as long as you want. I mean, for example, I was 5 years into my career when I asked for a buddy because I wanted somebody to mentor me so that I could get promoted. So you can ask for that at any stage, and that's our absolute pledge and commitment to you, that the support won't wane at any point. And as the chair of the Multicultural Police Association, rest assured, I like to know what my members are up to and have a temperature check. And if anybody's got issues, then I'm quite intrusive. And I want this to be the norm going forward, that no longer will individuals have their issues or identities exacerbated and problems become massive. We are part of the fabric that makes up Cumbria Constabulary, and we're here to stay.
That's great. Thank you very, very much, Siraaz. That was absolutely wonderful. Thank you. We really appreciate that.